There's no water, and it doesn't look like there will be any. Last week, the Occupation Administration in Donetsk announced stricter water rationing. This is despite the fact that water doesn't even reach the upper floors, and lines at distribution points stretch for hours. How did one of Ukraine's most successful and prosperous cities end up on the brink of a humanitarian and environmental disaster? Let's figure it out. So, since the beginning of August, water in Donetsk and Makiyivka is supplied only once every 3 days, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. In reality, though, this schedule is almost never followed, and instead of the allotted 4 hours, water runs for 2 hours, sometimes even less. Dirty, murky sludge comes out of the taps, and it also smells terrible. It's not suitable for drinking or cooking. At the same time, the local sanitary and epidemiological service claims that the water meets all norms and standards. On social media, people post videos showing how they have to purify the water using filters and special tablets, or even collect rainwater from puddles and storm drains.
Can you believe it, neighbor? The grandmother is 83 years old. Which one? How are we supposed to live? This is what water day looks like in Donetsk. Yeah, the pressure is already dropping. That's it. The rain is ending. All the buckets are full. Not bad. At least we can flush the toilet.
Residents of Donetsk pay 5 rubles per liter for drinking water at the store or from a vending machine. At the same time, for example, in Russian Rostov, bottled water is sold at half the price. People also receive water utility bills regularly. They charge the full rate. Essentially, they're demanding money for water that wasn't provided, or for a small amount of liquid that's not even suitable for household use.
What especially outrages people is the consumption standard set for residents: 330 liters per person per day. No one explains how a person is supposed to use 330 liters in 4 hours. It's not just absurd, it's an insult. Meanwhile, construction of residential complexes, road paving, fountains, and water shows continue in the city. All of this looks like a mockery of people who live without water and struggle to survive every day. From the appeal of residents of the temporarily occupied territories of Donetsk region.
Standing for hours under the scorching sun, waiting for water trucks to arrive, this has also become an everyday routine for residents of the territories of Donetsk region occupied by Russia. Sometimes the situation becomes downright absurd. For example, the head of the Occupation Administration in Makiyivka recorded a video in front of 2 water trucks that had arrived from the city of Kontimanziesk, that is, from 3,300 kilometers away. It's hard to understand or explain this, let alone call it help. But a lot of people could make money off this kind of logistics.
Another round of aid is coming to us from the regional overseers. This one's coming to us from Yugra, the Kontimansi Autonomous Okrug.
The water situation in the territory of Donetsk region temporarily occupied by Russia started to deteriorate back in 2014, and after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by the Russian army, it became downright critical. The Siversky Donetsk-Donbas Canal, which was the main water artery for Donetsk and the surrounding area, was destroyed as a result of the fighting. The occupation authorities tried to solve the problem by building a new line from Rostov. However, even at the planning stage, it was clear that the Donbas Canal would not meet the region's needs. Plus, this project was directly overseen by then Deputy Minister of Defense of Russia, Timur Ivanov. And what was stolen there wasn't just millions, but billions of Russian rubles. But at the same time, as usual, the occupation authorities tried to blame everything on Kiev.
For them, Ukraine is always to blame. But in reality, the Donbas Canal isn't working because the water pipelines are destroyed. Those pipelines needed to be repaired for 10 years. You know, since 2014, for 10 years, those pipelines needed repairs. So, If they had hooked up their infamous Donbas canal to those pipelines, there would have been fewer leaks. And with fewer leaks, more water would have actually reached the consumers. But as it is, the pipeline is basically destroyed. In some places, there are even ruptures where the water just gets lost, basically. And then the water supply gets shut off.
When the head of the Russian occupation administration, Pushilin, went to the Kremlin to report to Putin about the water situation, many people in Donetsk hoped he would be fired for the collapse of public utilities. But nothing changed. Pushilin kept his position, and Donetsk residents were left with empty taps. And more, the situation is starting to look like a planned genocide of Ukrainians who remain in the territories occupied by Russia. Because of the water shortage, the occupiers couldn't come up with anything better than to supply people with mine water. It's absurd. This water has never even been used for household needs. Why? The water contains toxic particles, minerals, and heavy salts. Using this water, even for household needs, causes people to get hepatitis and aggravates chronic illnesses. It leads to a serious and life-threatening condition, specifically cancer, because it contains various harmful heavy metals that absolutely cannot be effectively removed from this contaminated water by any known or advanced purification methods whatsoever. Due to the water shortage, chickens are dying at poultry farms in the occupied territories of Donetsk region. They simply have nothing to drink. Almost all industrial enterprises are operating intermittently. There's nothing to irrigate the fields with either, and part of the harvest has already been lost. Mariupol, Snezhnoye, Ilovaisk, and Kartsysk are now on the verge of total collapse. At the same time, according to the Center for National Resistance, the occupiers have turned access to drinking water into a tool for forcing people to take Russian citizenship. Water is provided exclusively to those who have obtained a Russian passport. And first and foremost, the military are supplied with water, while civilians only get what's left over.
Russia is creating and provoking a water crisis in the occupied territories of Ukraine, and Russian troops are using water infrastructure for military purposes. The water crisis is a direct result of the Russian occupation of Ukraine and, as a consequence, the destruction and mismanagement of water resources, and it is also a clear violation of Russia's international legal obligations. From a report by the Institute for the Study of War.
And this situation on the occupied territories isn't just about water. For example, last week in Makiyevka, a school in the city center suddenly collapsed. It was only because it's currently school holidays that no one was hurt. But the most interesting part is that the school had just undergone a major renovation, on paper, but in reality, almost all the money was stolen. Before 2014, the cities of Donbas took pride in their metallurgical, chemical, and machine-building plants. The mines were operating, new roads, schools, and hospitals were being built. Donetsk was a modern metropolis, huge malls, hotels, business centers, theaters. For Euro 2012, they built an airport here and the world-class stadium Donbas Arena. Thousands of students from dozens of countries studied at Donetsk universities. And people from all over Europe would come to Philharmonic concerts. Now, the city occupied by Russia is left without proper water supply, with destroyed infrastructure and a massive outflow of residents, including specialists. But the main problem people are worried about is how to survive the winter. There is less and less water every day, which means the heating season is at risk.